So I've been thinking a lot about this idea of chivalry as kind of the necessary antidote to the masculine half of the meaning crisis, or the crisis between men and women, the poly crisis, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's interesting because that word chivalry has been around for a long time, and it's taken on a connotation within modernity and like boomerality, I guess you could say, that is not quite accurate. So I've been reading this book on Parzival by Charles Kovacs, and it's a Waldorf education resource book. So it's from his lectures to like an 11th grade class or something like that. And he gives basically, the chapters kind of alternate between an abridged version of the story and some of his commentary and the things that he's pulling out. And it's really, really good so far. I think he said he retired teaching in like 1976. So 11th grade, education from a more sophisticated method of schooling from 1976 is probably more advanced than half of what you get from a college course nowadays. Anyway, but he kind of talks about this emergence of chivalry and the chivalric code and where it comes from. It comes from, these Frankish soldiers, these Frankish warriors or whatever, who were the barbarians that conquered Rome. And they were known for their Teutonic fury, this, basically this, barbarian rage, I guess you could say. And Damien Walter, I found it took me a little while to find, but he had posted something on Facebook because he recently released a video about the movie Excalibur and why most Arthurian adaptations kind of fail. And this is and he kind of hits on this in this one part. He says, let's try the intermediate level discussion about Arthurian mythos. It's very difficult to tell a King Arthur story today. Why? The chap on the right is Brock Lesnar, an all-time great MMA fighter. If you want to accurately cast Lancelot du Lac as he might have been, wrap Brock in armor, give him a bastard sword, and remove all moral constraints from his behavior. But Nicholas Clay is a great casting as Lancelot because he has something of Brock about him, but also elegance and beauty. He's a civilized man. And the Arthurian mythos, at its best, is attempting to turn the man on the right into the man on the left. It's a civilizing force. But at its lowest, the Arthurian mythos is just mystification. It's just a cover story written by medieval poets terrified that Brock Lesnar with a sword would kill them, who told flattering stories of heroism about men who were just violent, murderous barbarians. So to tell a King Arthur story today, you have to manage this tension between a very high, aspirational myth and a very dark reality. Excalibur is one answer to that. Lean into the operatic Wagnerian mystification. Game of Thrones is another. Lean into the grimdark. Then the advanced level question is, what are today's mythic narratives that present a high aspirational vision but cover a much more complex and dark reality? I'd suggest many of them are science fiction. And yeah, that's probably true. I think that the like Parker Settecase, he had a really good article about the Dune thing, basically saying like Frank Herbert really failed in trying to make us believe that Paul was the bad guy. Paul's a complex character. He does hard things for the sake of, whatever, civilization. That's neither here nor there. So the one thing I would definitely say, the weak word in Damien's post, is when he says that the medieval poets told flattering stories of heroism about men who were just violent, murderous barbarians. So that's the key word, the just just thing. And I think, what Kovacs points out in his book is, and this is, I think you can see this, it's evidenced in what happened to society, is that the code of chivalry, basically, it did not attenuate that power and that might, that physical strength, but what it did do is it gave it a focus of where to attack and who and when not to. And basically, the chief thing is that it took the category of the weakest people, women, the poor, the misfortuned children, and it said you cannot use your strength against them. That's not fair. You have to use it to protect them. Now, who are you protecting them from? Sometimes real barbarians, other times knights who are a little bit more barbarian than they should be. And the interesting thing is in these stories is that you see, like, the violence aspect is fully there, because and then there's these other kind of codes of honor that start to it gives a set of rules for where different men can interact with each other, but if somebody doesn't do it the right way, if they're offended, they may attack. And the thing is the stories are littered with these tales of knights who are dying over some trivial insults that somebody does by mistake, even, and if you look at the Metatron channel, he makes a good point in one of his videos I remember watching. Knights were rich. It was not a common person. To be a knight, to own a full set of armor and have a weapon and a horse and all this stuff, these guys were super elites. But at any moment, they knew that they could potentially just die. And so within that system, the code of chivalry protected honor, and it protected women's honor, and rightly the Christian influence channeled that energy. But as far as men interacting with other men, you could still die really easy, even if you were a good person, and a good person could easily lose to a bad person. And the way of the world is that oftentimes the evil person is stronger than the good person. And so the knight that tries to defend his lady's honor in a noble way, he may die at the hands of some brute who is an evil man. I think there's sort of a trust in a cosmic sense of justice that, that the evil, eventually their hubris gets the better of them, and then, the good knight eventually wins. And on the whole, I would say that's true, because we have a civilized world and we don't have a barbaric world, or at least we did. Now, where it gets to modern day, and so the boomerality, which really is the predecessor of wokeness, comes into play because it's removed the violent aspect of that. So, men don't have to worry about fighting other men and losing their life. But on the converse of that is that men don't have to worry about facing the consequences of evil deeds. At worst, they get thrown into prison where they can act like barbarians and fight each other if they want to, and they can have a battle with somebody at the drop of a hat over some silly insult. But the loss of that masculine power, the victims of that has been the weak and the downtrodden. And so, in our talk, that's why I was saying, with this whole Lily Phillips thing, that would be the thing for men to embrace a chivalric worldview would be to, and this is the problem. So Paul Vanderklay basically kind of had his idea of what he thought is the right way. And this is the boomer vision of chivalry.
But what she really wants, getting back to Rod, is someone who would come into that room and look at her in the eye and say, I'm willing to take you, and I will be better for you than 1 million OnlyFans and $1 billion, because I will give you what you really want, which is love.
Yeah, I don't know if she would hear that while she's busy disassociating. Like,
True.
is the flowers in a cuck line meme, which I'll put a little picture of, and it's not good. It's embarrassing, and it's become a meme, and it's because the post-war consensus, and I'm not saying it wasn't a good thing in a lot of ways, and this like principle of non-coercion, it has a real flaw in that it doesn't. It has a blind spot because we don't apply it evenly. Because, we really do not believe in using violence as a coercive force, but that's let us go too far in like this area of consent, and not even just the Lily Phillips thing, but the more pertinent example is these grooming gangs that have come to light recently in England. And I know this has been a thing that's been ongoing for a long time, but many people are only finding out about it now because it's so embarrassing to the narrative. And I think the problem is, and this is the fatal flaw, is that men have stopped being barbarians towards each other in the fighting, but we've also stopped in protecting women, and that means that the barbarians get to have their way because we have these laws of like consent and non-intervention and things like that. And the reason why I think is because the boomerality really, the free love element of it, it really combined with the judge not, it's really, really hard for those in power now to call out any of this action because it means they have to face their own sinfulness and they have to repent of their own sins. And so essentially to protect their own sins from coming to light, and this is not just to say like actual people who are guilty of these actual implicit things. I just mean like the whole facing the fact that our parents' generation adopted this attitude towards like, yeah, sex is fun and dirty and we can get away with it or whatever, like free love. Like they've been the beneficiaries of it, and they would have to repent of that in order to be able to call out the real evil that's going on. And so the absolute value of the chivalric system was like, it made women and the weak in essentially a special category, and it protected them. Boomerality has turned like racial and cultural minority groups into the ultimate victim cast, and it protects them to an extreme. And the other problem with it is that it happens at this level of scale because, there's always this tension of like, it's good to have a right to privacy, but the cost of a right to privacy is to say that if somebody can maintain the appearance of proper behavior in public life, they may be able to get away with abusive action within the privacy of their own home. So like that's the problem, that's why child protective services and domestic abuse and stuff like that, we find out about them when they happen in the slums, in the ghetto, in the white trash neighborhoods, the trailer parks, because the police have a probable cause for showing up there. But when it happens in the penthouse suite or in the McMansion or the high-rise apartment or whatever, the police are not going to come. Because the perpetrators know how to play the system too well. And the real problem is that we've extended that like right of privacy. So I think we don't want cameras in every household. We don't want 1984. That that could be used to eradicate certain abuses within a household. But the problem is that it would also impose a specific viewpoint of like what is good on every household, that our society needs to be able to debate some of those things. Because obviously that's like the fear of people who are really good people who are trying to homeschool their kids or practice their religious freedoms in certain ways. But when it comes to like these minority groups, especially like as it is in the UK, and there are other pockets of it in the US, in places like Michigan where they have these large populations, and even in the ghettoized, communities of big cities, the police only go to the border of those places. They will not go inside. And so you've widened the area where bad actors can get away with things, and you've made it to a whole group level. And it's really problematic is that you have maybe these poor white families. It doesn't matter that they're white, but what matters is that they are an outside population that's forced to live in a poor community that's dominated by this protected group, and then they are completely unprotected by any sort of state service that is meant to do those things. And so essentially, I think in some sense, young men need to consider the fact of like loving their neighbor may mean exercising masculinity and strength, not to do evil, but to prevent evil and to protect the weak and the downtrodden from being abused. So that's my thought on this complex subject, and I will continue. This relates to the longer video I just released, and I'm going to continue to be studying it. It's writing the remnants of what didn't make it into my book. This whole kind of sphere of male-female relations. So let me know what you think of that. Thank you.